Hi everyone, it's Shari Carroll for SimonsSaysStamp.com, and I have for you a photo frame collage using some Tim Holtz Idea-Ology products. I picked up a frame and the actual outside of the frame is 12 by 12, and then the inside measurement of the mat board is 7.5 by 7.5. I have taped down some Ranger watercolor paper on my work surface, and my tape edges sit just at the inside measurement of that mat board. The tape is holding the watercolor paper down just so it sits flat during my processes and reminds me of the edges that I need to keep within. Also, I am working on the smooth side of the paper. I wanted to give Tim Holtz's new mediums a try, so I thought I would cover the entire sheet of my watercolor paper, and this is the medium that is Crazing, and I'm also using the new brush that he just came out with. So I'm going to just go ahead and put this all over the entire sheet, and I can go right on up to my tape lines. And with this brush, I'm really getting great brush strokes, so I want to make sure that I go in different directions so that it almost has a canvas look. I know that I'll be using some distress paint and also some embossing paste on top of this, so I just wanted to give it a try and see what type of texture I can get. Once I'm done covering this sheet, I'm going to go ahead and let it air dry until it's completely dry. So my Crazing is all completely dry, and I have spritzed my paper with a little bit of water, and I'm using some cracked pistachio distress paint, and I really have it watered down, and I'm letting the paint just kind of flow into the areas where the paper is already wet. I'm just tapping my paintbrush to the surface and just letting the paint flow where it will. By doing this, I get almost a watercolor wash effect instead of a heavy layer of paint. For this, once I am done adding my paint, I'm going to go ahead and use my heat tool to set this and let it dry a little bit. I do want to capture some of the pooling of the paint. I've noticed a lot of the times when I'm doing washes that if I let it air dry into the paper, it almost soaks in too much. So using the heat tool really helps to define the edges. I'm going to go back in with some more paint, and so I'll go ahead and spritz this again with my water sprayer. And then once again, with my wet paintbrush, I'll dip into my paint and go ahead and just add some small areas. I'm using a smaller paintbrush this time, and I'm just trying to get a little bit of those puddles going on around where that water's been sprayed. My surface is now completely dry, and I have the Gothic stencil from Tim Holtz and also some white embossing paste from Wendy Vecchi, and I'm going to just add this with my palette knife. When I scoop it out, I grab it so that the paste sits on the back, and then I just spread it over the stencil. And once I'm done spreading the paste out, then I'll go back with my palette knife and I'll smooth everything out. And then when I'm completely done, I can go ahead and return whatever's left over on the knife right back into the container. This paste will give me a lot of great texture on this piece. And the stencil that I'm using has quite a bit of a girly look to it, so it'll go really well with my photograph. So I've let my paste dry really well, and I have some of the Ranger foil here and also the Collage glue stick. And I'm trying something new. I'm just going to add a little bit of glue to the paste, and since my glue stick sits really nice and flat, and also the foil is nice and flat, I can just rub this right on, and it should pick up and stick to that paste. The trick to this is to get the foil right onto the glue, like don't let it dry too much, and also to burnish it in really well with your finger, or you could also use a bone folder. So after my first run, it did work. It looks a little bit distressed, and I'll show you in a photograph in a little bit. It's picking up not only the texture of the stencil, but also the texture that the paste will leave, like how the surface is rough rather than really smooth. So this is working out really nicely, and I am really glad I tried it. My background is pretty much done, and so now I'm going to start adding things around my photograph. So I have the Tim Holtz pocket cards here, and I have chosen one of the larger ones, and I've torn it at the bottom, and then I added my little letter stickers that say Little One. So this will say Dream Little One. And it's a picture of my granddaughter Melody while she was sleeping, and I just kind of captured a fun moment. I'm also using the Tim Holtz film strip, and I've already cut off a piece of that. And I'll be attaching this to my piece by using my tiny attacher. So I'll just hold this in place and go ahead and add a staple to the left, and making sure I have it tight and across that paper, and go ahead and staple it to the right. I'll be building everything around my photograph, and then I'll add that to the card once I'm done. I'm also using a strip of Tim Holtz lace from his lace trimmings, and also the word dream, which is from the little flashcards. So when I turn this over, you can see how everything is just laid together. And to attach these two layers together, I'll go ahead and use my tiny attacher once again. I'm also using the Wildflowers Thinlits, and these are also Tim Holtz for Zix, and I'm using one of the blossoms here, and I have just die cut this using some of the watercolor paper. It was actually from a trimming, and these are really nice and dainty. And to glue this down, I'm just using my multi-matte medium. I've added quite a bit to the petal part, and I'm just using my finger to kind of add some to the smaller stem. So once I have enough of that matte medium on there, I can go ahead and place this right onto the photo arrangement. Next, I'm adding some mirrored hearts up to the top portion, and again I'm using my multi-matte medium. This is probably the best glue, especially for heavier embellishments. So next I'll just kind of pat everything down and let it set and dry. And as one of my final touches, I'm adding a number plaque, which is number 15, with a little bit of matte medium. This has meaning because Melody was 15 months old when I took the picture, so I'll just go ahead and push that down and let it dry. And I'm going to slide this matte board over so you get an idea of how this looks without that green border. The adhesive I'm using for the back of my panel is from Elizabeth Crafts, and it's a double-sided tape. This is a little bit stronger adhesive, and it's really easy to use. You can tear it to whatever size that you need. So once I have my tape down, I'm going to pull off some of the backing from the tape from the center of my piece, and I'm going to go ahead and use my straight edge and press down that center. So what I can do now is just lift up some of the edges and pull off the backing and get a really good seal around all the sides. So I'll just start off at a corner, and I'll just go ahead and grab with my thumbnail, and once you get it, it's really easy to do. Now I can just go ahead and press that down and seal that. And now I can show you some close-ups of how that foil turned out. You can see it's sitting on top of the embossing paste with a nice distressed look, and I really like the daintiness of those flowers as well. Towards the bottom I added that 15 for Melody's age in months, and you can see all this great layering with the film strip and the flower and the lace and also some extra paper. And here's a look at the piece in the frame. So it's really fun to start off with a small 3.5 by 3.5 photo and start building layers of papers and lace and other textures around it. I hope I've given you some inspiration on creating a framed photo collage using some Tim Holtz Idea-Ology products. And as always, thanks for watching.